Good morning, everyone. We uh, we are so excited this morning for this topic, for all of you to be here with us. We do have quite a few attendees this morning, which is great. It means this is a hot topic that you're all very interested in. Our guest today is Joe Willett, who is the Executive Director at the Office of the State Traffic Administration. I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, are familiar with Joe already, but I am going to turn it over to him right now because he has a lot of information he wants to share with you, and we want to make sure that there's time for questions. So, Joe, it is all you.
Thanks, Melissa. Can you see my screen? Very good.
Yep,
Good morning, everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is Joe Willett from Connecticut Department of Transportation, the Office of the State Traffic Administration. Just a little bit about my background. I've been at the department for over 36 years, the last 2 years as the Executive Director of OSTA. Before OSTA, I was in the engineering department and I was a state safety engineer. For those who are not familiar with what OSTA does, we're a regulatory agency within DOT that approves large developments called major traffic generators. We also review and approve speed limits on all public roads, review and approve municipally owned traffic signals. We review and approve no through truck requests for all public roads, and so much more. For today's presentation, I'm going to be highlighting what's in the legislation for the automated traffic enforcement safety devices, as well as the guidance document that the department plans on publishing. I have about 20 slides to go through, so I ask that you hold your questions until the end. So before I start explaining some of the requirements of the legislation and guidance, I think it's important to explain how we got here. A Vision Zero Council was established in 2021 by the Connecticut General Assembly under Public Act 21-28. The council is a working group that is multidisciplinary, that includes DOT, Department of Public Health, Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, Motor Vehicles, State Education Department, Connecticut Office Early Childhood Development, as well as the Deputy State's Attorney's Office. There are 4 Vision Zero subcommittees: Engineering, Education, Equity, and Enforcement. Around this time last year, the Vision Zero Council considered numerous recommendations from each of the 4 subcommittees. And the council shortlisted those recommendations. Automated traffic enforcement safety devices was one of those. Eventually, what was packaged into what the Connecticut General Assembly considered in January 2023 under House Bill 5917. So in May, Public Act 23-116 was passed, which allows the use of automated traffic enforcement safety devices. The legislation became effective October 1st of this year. One of the requirements under the Public Act is that Connecticut DOT develop and publish guidelines on the automated traffic enforcement safety devices no later than January 1st, 2024. The guidelines have been drafted, and they're really considered a work in progress, and I'll be discussing those in subsequent slides. Just a point of clarification throughout my presentation, I may use the acronym ATESD, which basically it's the same thing as speed enforcement cameras, red light running cameras. It's all the same thing. So an automated traffic enforcement safety device is designed to collect and detect evidence of alleged violations by recording images that capture the license plate, date, time, and location. As enumerated in the Public Act, ATSDs can only be installed in 4 types of locations: traffic control signals for red light running, school zones for speeding, pedestrian safety zones for speeding, and other locations for speeding. The other locations is really like a catch-all. So I will be discussing the 4 types of locations where devices can be installed in greater detail in the forthcoming slides. Municipalities are responsible for establishing enforcement ordinances, selecting locations for the devices, and establishing protocols for maintenance and enforcement. Before a device can be installed, the municipality must submit a plan to OSTA for review and approval. So as I just mentioned, the department is required to develop and publish guidelines for municipalities no later than January 1st, 2024. The draft guidance was developed by a working group representation from the DOT Commissioner's Office, Bureau of Engineering and Construction, Policy, and the Bureau of Policy and Planning. The draft guidance is being discussed with numerous interested groups and other stakeholders, and your feedback is welcome and encouraged. Once we complete all our presentations, we plan to discuss the feedback we receive with our internal stakeholders and make any necessary changes to the guidance to make it more workable for the communities. So the guidance includes multiple things. Factors that municipalities must consider before selecting a location for an ATESD. And there are 2 categories: transportation safety and equity. It also includes overview of the OSTA review and approval process. It includes duration of the ATSD approval. It includes reporting requirements for municipalities. It has a model privacy policy for privacy, security, collection, and destruction of personal data. It also includes information about process to notify companies such as Waze, Google's, TomTom, Apple Maps, MapQuest, I'm sure there are others, about the location of any ATSD locations. So Public Act 23-116 requires a municipality to consider numerous elements when selecting locations for an ATSD. They're broken down into 2 categories: safety and equity. And the safety elements include the average daily traffic along the roadway geometry, traffic stops conducted and reported to the Office of Policy and Management, and crash history, especially those involved in an operator running a red light. Our partners from UConn's Transportation Research Center have developed a tool to assist communities to find locations that might benefit from a red light running camera. The data in the tool comes directly from the Connecticut Crash Data Repository. The data is based on crashes from 2020 to 2022, and it only includes crashes at signalized intersections as reported on the State of Connecticut crash form, where at least one driver has run a red light. What I've shown on the screen is just a landing page for the tool, and the tool is web-based and will be available for anyone to use and includes instructions and tips. The next few slides are just screenshots from the red light violation tool. The tool allows filtering by town, road name, and intersecting road. And what's up on the screen here on the upper portion of the page and the below shows some of the filtered results. The map will filter and update according to the parameters at the top of the page. Users can choose to use the map to find and highlight a location. There are 2 views of the data available. The first shows the data for each intersection, and the second shows all the individual crash records. There are several fields available for the user to view, including date, location, type of intersection, most severe injury, and manner of collision. The slide is a screenshot that shows all the red light crashes statewide. There were over 33,000 crashes from 2020 to 2022 and over 5,200 crashes that involve a red light violation. I recognize the information on the slide is hard to read, But in the upper left corner, there is a chart of all the top 10 towns where the red light running crashes are prevalent. New Haven, Hartford, Stamford, Bridgeport, Waterbury, Danbury, Norwalk, New Britain, Manchester, and Middletown. Below the chart in the map is all the 33,000 intersection crashes. In this case, I sorted it alphabetically by town, but the data can be sorted numerous ways, including only the municipality you may be interested in. What I just covered were the safety considerations that municipalities needs to consider when selecting a potential location for a red light running camera. The municipalities also need to consider equity. And under Public Act 23-116 says two things about that need to be considered. The municipality must consider the poverty rate, as well as the percent of occupied housing units with vehicles. The working group put a lot of thought into equity. We wanted to use a resource that was workable for municipalities, which is also consistent with the legislative intent. We consulted with Ken Barone from the Institute of Municipal and Regional Policy at UConn, and he recommended that we use qualified census tracts. QCT is something that's publicly available, and it's a poverty metric which municipalities should already be familiar with. For those who are not familiar with what a QCT is, it's a designation used by the U.S. Treasury Department as well as U.S. Housing and Urban Development, where any census tract where either 50% or more of the households have an income less than 60% of the area median gross income, or have a poverty rate of at least 20%. QCTs is a common, readily accessible, geographically granular method identifying communities with a large proportion of low-income residents. To ensure that these devices are not overloaded in economically disadvantaged communities or underprivileged communities, we're going to only limit the devices to only 2 per qualified census tract. Ultimately, it's the responsibility of OSA to reject a location of a device if it's determined that the overall distribution of the devices violates the principles of equity under the Public Act. I realize that it's difficult to see the details in this slide, but the pink shaded areas are the QCTs in Connecticut based on the 2020 census. There are a total of 177 qualified QCTs in Connecticut in 28 towns: Ansonia, Bethel, Bloomfield, Bridgeport, Bristol, Danbury, Derby, East Hartford, Enfield, Griswold, Groton, Hamden, Hartford, Manchester, Mansfield, Meriden, Middletown, New Britain, New Haven, New London, Norwalk, Stamford, Torrington, Vernon, Waterbury, West Hartford, and Windham. I took a screenshot of the QCTs. Here again, it's in the pink shaded areas in the Hartford area, and this is what it looks like. There are many QCTs in Hartford, a few in East Hartford, and in Manchester. There's also QCT in the southeastern part of Bloomfield. Here again, a municipality is only allowed to install no more than 2 devices in an area that's designated as a QCT. Here's another example of a QCT in the greater Hartford area. Most of New Haven is in a QCT, and same thing with a few of the surrounding areas, including Hamden and West Haven. So Public Act 23-116 enumerated several things that a municipality must do before installing an automated traffic enforcement safety devices. All documents need to be submitted to OSTA, and the process it's a 2-step process. Step 1 is to ensure that all the required documents have been submitted. The information includes a written justification explaining how and why an ATSD was selected for each location. This is essentially, we want communities to show their work. Another thing is the history of crash data in OPM reported traffic stops. Another requirement is a copy of the current traffic signal control plan showing the location, the advanced signs informing motorists where the devices might be located. The department will provide the sign details for each of the required signs to ensure that they're MUTC compliant. Also needs to be submitted as a copy of the required ordinance adopted by the municipality regarding ATSDs. Copy of the notice of the required public hearing by the municipality. Copy of the municipality's comprehensive safety action plan. We recognize that many communities may not have a comprehensive action safety plan. In lieu of the CSAP, OSTA will initially accept a municipal Vision Zero action plan or the Regional Transportation Safety Plan, which was prepared for each one of the 9 COGs a couple years ago. And each one of those regional transportation safety plans has a section specific to each municipality. Municipalities are also required to submit a copy of the minutes where the municipality legislative body voted to approve the required ATSD plan, as well as evidence of notice of persons or firms or companies with mobile devices regarding an ATSD. Step 2 is the formal OSTA review process. Under the enabling legislation, OSTA has 60 days to either approve or reject the town submission in whole or in part. OSTA's purview under the Public Act is very, very specific. It's only 2 things. Determine the municipality's plan is likely to improve traffic safety at the proposed locations. And the second thing is to make sure that the distribution of these devices are equitable throughout the municipality. Also, OSTA is required to approve the original plan, and it's valid for 3 years after the first device becomes operational. Subsequent ATSD plans are also valid for 3 years from the approval date. Municipalities may submit modifications to the original plan, provided the approval has not expired and must follow the submittal, review, and approval process as the initial ATSD plan. Approval of any modifications to the plan expire on the same date as the original plan. Everything I'm talking about here is enumerated in the Public Act. The guidance that the department is preparing includes some specific things that need to be submitted based on the location of an ATSD. We'll talk about traffic control signals first. And red light running cameras can be allowed and considered at both municipally owned and state-owned traffic signals. For the signals, the municipality must provide a copy of the traffic signal plan and also will be checking to ensure that the plan matches what we have on file. All traffic control signals, new or revised, must be approved by OSTA under Section 14-298, the Connecticut General Statutes. Second requirement is that the traffic signal clearance intervals, the red, yellow pedestrian crossing, must also be optimized. This is a national best practice and one of Federal Highway's 28 proven safety countermeasures. All the clearance intervals of state-owned signals have already been optimized. And finally, there needs to be a high frequency or percentage of crashes where the operator ran a red light. School zones. So OSTA is going to be looking to make sure that the school zones meet the definition of 14-212B. And under that statute, OSTA may designate a school zone on a state highway, or the local traffic authority has the ability and authority to establish a school zone on a municipally owned road near a school. If the speed limit is lower in a school zone, that must be previously approved by OSTA. OSTA has authority on any speed limit changes, regardless of who owns the road. There's a variation under school zones regarding fines doubled. And depending on which road you're on, municipally owned or state-owned road, the local traffic authority or OSTA has purview on those. And the final thing is we're going to be checking to make sure the school zone signing is consistent with the MUTCD. Requirements for pedestrian safety zones. Here again, we're going to be making sure that the location of a pedestrian safety zone meets the statutory definition under 14-307A. We're going to be checking to see if the pedestrian safety zone has been previously approved by OSA or the local traffic authority, and ensure that the pedestrian safety zone signing is consistent with the MUTCD. The best of my knowledge, there are no approved pedestrian safety zones in Connecticut. And other locations, which is just a very broad category. We're going to be requiring a written justification explaining how and why a device was selected for that location. And we're also going to need information regarding the history of speed-related crashes or speeding violations. If any of the additional information I just went over for each location has not been submitted, OSA will consider the request to be incomplete. Oh, let me just get to my right slide. Hold on, please. Oh, one more here. Okay. The information in this slide comes directly from the public deck, and I'm just going to highlight some of the things here. Municipality must adopt an ordinance to impose a fine for citations. Municipalities can enter in agreements with vendors for the design, operation, or maintenance of a device. And the vendor's fees cannot be contingent on the number of citations issued or fines paid. The ATESD operators shall complete mandatory training and obtain a signed certificate from the manufacturer. There's an annual requirement for calibration. At least 30 days before an ATESD is operational, the municipality shall develop and implement a public awareness campaign for the following: educating the public about the importance of obeying speed limits and traffic signals, as well as the imminent use of a device in the municipality. Funds received from fines must be used for either two things: investing in transportation infrastructure or pay for the costs associated with the device. Here are some of the requirements under the Public Act regarding enforcement. The police department employee or person designated by the local traffic authority shall review and approve the recorded images from the device before a citation is mailed to the vehicle owner. For the first 30 days where the device is operational, the owner shall receive a written warning. The citations must include the name and address of owner, the plate number of the motor vehicle, the violation charged, the location of the device, and the date and time of the violation. A copy of information on how to electronically view any recorded images. A statement from the reviewing official who determined that the motor vehicle violated an ordinance. Verification that the device was operating correctly at the time of the alleged violation. The amount of the fine imposed and how to pay the fine, as well as the right to contest the violation and request a hearing. And just a few more about the enforcement requirements. Citation shall be mailed via first-class mail, not more than 30 days after the owner's address has been confirmed by Connecticut Department of Motor Vehicles or by another jurisdiction. And the fines are violation of an ordinance and cannot be more than $50 for the first offense or more than $75 for the second and subsequent offenses. The municipality may charge a $15 fee for processing of a payment for the associated fine. Public Act 23-116 detailed numerous reporting requirements for municipalities. No later than 18 months after the device is operational, the municipality must submit a report to OSTA as well as the Connecticut General Assembly containing the following information: the number of violations for failing to comply with the red light indication, the number and type of crashes that occurred at each location before and after the device was installed, the number of crashes of violation at similar locations that do not have an ATESD device, descriptions of situations where the recorded images could not be used, the number of leased, rented, or out-of-state vehicles where enforcement efforts were unsuccessful, the amount of revenue from fines associated by fees retained by the municipality, as well as the cost to the municipality to use an ATESD device. Also, not more than 1 year after the municipality submits its initial report, and every year thereafter, another report needs to be submitted to OSTA as well as the Connecticut General Assembly containing the following: the number of motor vehicles that were subject to 1, 2, 3, or more citations. For red light running violations, the number of citations at each location where the motor vehicle making a right turn proceeding through the intersection or making a left turn. A list of engineering and educational countermeasures taken by the municipality to improve safety at locations where there's an ATSD is present. And finally, data regarding how many citations were issued, how many hearings were requested, and the results of any such hearings. The department is building a website that will be hosted on the Connecticut DOT's main website, though, for all things ATSD. We're going to have numerous numerous categories, including program overview, the guidance document that I've been referring to, resources, any of the plans and reports that were required under the Public Act will be posted here as well. Citation and fines information, as well as frequently asked questions. We hope that the webpage should go live in early to mid-December. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Joe, so much.
Let me stop sharing my screen here.
Sure.
Okay. Yep. If I can find that button here, hold on.
Oh, that's a scary picture.
Yeah, I got it. I found it.
No
Okay,
problem.
I'm back.
So we did have a couple of questions come through as you were presenting. So we had a couple of people ask if the red light running tool was active yet, and if so, could we share the link with them? And also, if you have a link to the census tract site, or if you could direct folks to where they can find that. We had a question come in about that as well. And I do see some hands going up.
So let's get to those tools that I did not risk doing a live demo on both of those. So
understood.
Those tools are under development, and I would think within the next couple weeks they should be available, and we're going to be posting those on our DOT website.
Perfect. Okay. Luke, I see you have your hand up. Luke Buttenweiser, if you want to just unmute, you can go ahead and ask.
Thanks, Melissa. I have a few questions. I hope that's okay. Thank you for the presentation, Joe. I guess my first question is, you mentioned fines doubled either in I guess in a school zone, or we do have a work zone scenario. How does a fines doubled location interact with the $50 and $75 fine maximum for the cameras?
Yeah, look, that's a great question. That came up in internal debate, and it's our understanding of the way the Public Act is written, that's a separate fine. It is not applicable for for these cameras. So, and I don't think you can charge a citation to have two fines for the same offense. So it's my understanding only the fine regarding violation of the speed enforcement camera will be applicable.
Okay. Does the public act speak to anything related to scofflaws in terms of what municipalities can do with, people who don't pay a certain number of fines or, unpaid fees and fines?
It does not. It just indicates that at the end of the day, when they're required to submit the reports to the legislature and a copy to OSTA regarding indicate the number of things where you're unable to collect fines for. So that's where you were reported, but it doesn't really go into anything more than that. That's not saying that the municipality, when they adopt their own ordinance, can't come up with some new their own requirements.
Okay. And then, sorry, just one last question for now. Does CONDOT have any sort of cooperative camera vendor, for instance, that municipalities may be able to piggyback off of?
Not to my knowledge. We do have a program that's been sunsetted regarding the cameras in the work zone through a vendor, but we're really not in a position to recommend or encourage any particular vendor. So it's really up to the municipalities to decide which vendor they may want to use.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, Joe, for the presentation
welcome.
as well. It's very, very informative.
Okay. Sandeep, you are next if you'd like to unmute.
Hi, good morning. This is great. I mean, I was really looking forward to this thing. So I have a few questions. I'm trying to pull my notes together. So there's this thing about, the DMV lookup on slide 20 that you had. So citation should be mailed 30 days after. I mean, I'm guessing this relates to what Luke was asking about scofflaws. Sometimes we've had this issue where we're not able to kind of have that, the connection with the DMV, especially out of state. What's the statute's take on that? Are those like missed citations?
I'm assuming so. I don't really have any more information over and above what's in the Public Act. In my reading of it, as well as other colleagues here in the agency, it's just that you just have to report them. You're not able to collect those funds in your report, but feel free to make your own independent review of what the Public Act says. So we don't have any authority to add anything more to what they put what's already in the Public Act. That's not really our charge.
Okay. The other thing is, this is where in the statute, it's a little confusing. On slide 21, you said for the 18-month report, the number of crashes and violations at similar locations that do not have ATSD. What does that similar really mean?
So it's maybe an adjacent signalized intersection that does not have cameras. It has the same roadway geometrics regarding the same number of lanes, same type of traffic signal phasing. Essentially, I think where the legislature was going with that for that requirement is to help build a case. Are these ATSD devices really effective accomplishing their goals regarding it's all about safety. And there's really no way of determining that unless you compare a similar location that does not have the devices. I think that's where the legislature was going with that requirement.
Yeah, so the other thing I really wanted to get a sense of, the municipalities haven't had a chance to review the draft document beyond just this first presentation. Is it something coming out, and what is the timeline for us to provide comments?
The comments, we're still working on some fine details. We're still meeting with other interested stakeholders, and I consider today's meeting interested stakeholders. We still have another couple meetings planned. And once we do that, we hope to publish our revised guidance on the DOT website. I would anticipate that be the first or second week of December.
Okay.
Remember, the statute says that we have until January 1st. We're not going to miss that deadline. It'll be about 2 weeks before that.
Okay, so I'm guessing municipalities will have about a month to sort of review that and provide comments.
That's right. Now, guidelines are meant to be changed, and it's really if we get feedback such that we can enhance or clarify things to make it easier for municipalities to use, that's our intention. We want to get to yes, as many locations as we possibly can that make sense for these ATSD devices.
One last question regarding the speeding. I know some of the DOT data provides information on speeding related crashes. Is there a separate website that you've created similar to a red light violation that provides that information for municipalities to easily sort of pass the data?
No, we the only information we have would be everything that's already on the Connecticut crash report. If in fact the officer put down that specific statute, then you could go through the crash reports and tease out that information. But no, we don't have any information regarding that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, Sandeep. Some really good questions. So Joe, you may have said this already, but someone asked if there was an ETA on when the website would be live.
First or second week of December.
Okay. And then Terry Thompson is asking, are the COGS one of the stakeholder groups you are meeting with?
Yeah, I met with the COGS last Tuesday or Wednesday, last week.
On the were you on the call, the Connecticut COG call? Did you present there, or did you go individually?
Oh no, it was a web meeting.
Okay, so this question just came in. For the other locations category, how is a quote history of speeding violations unquote qualified? Similarly, what determines the eligible frequency of red light violation crashes? So the first one is speeding violations.
So we want municipalities to show their work, and we want them to provide a narrative explaining what the problem is at a subject location and how a installation device will improve safety. So although we put some rough framework on high number of crashes, high percentage of crashes, high number of speeding related violations, it's really up to the municipality to build a case to prove to OSTA that there's a problem, and the installation of a camera will improve safety. So it's vague on purpose to give municipalities as much flexibility. They know their roads better than we do.
And then what determines the eligible frequency of red light violation crashes? Same answer.
Yeah, we just have a rough framework up there. We really don't want to put any hard numbers on it. You must have 2, must have 4. No, we really don't want to do that.
I will say too, I mean, just to a couple of these questions, the crash repository, if you use the story maps, there's a speeding tab. So it might be beneficial for municipalities to use that initially before you do a deeper dive into speeding related crashes, because that's going to give you a zoomed in look at your speeding crashes. And then you can start to see where the higher number of those have occurred. And then you can do some more research using the actual reports in the repository. But that's a great tool to kind of give you a first glance, my 2 cents on how you can see some of that data. Dwayne has his hand up. Dwayne Martin, will let you go. And then I have a question that came in the chat as well. But Dwayne was first.
Thanks, Melissa. Good morning, everyone. It's Dwayne from West Hartford. Hey, Joe. Question for you, walking down this path a little bit. So municipalities that are interested in deploying cameras for both speed enforcement and red light running, but on state highways or at state intersections, once we submit the plans and get approval through OSTA, what happens next? Do we apply for encroachment permits? And then what happens for the red light running? Is it like preemption where you're mounting a cabinet or some extra auxiliary device? I'm assuming we're not going to be allowed to go into the cabinets, but just want to understand that process a little bit better. Thank you.
Our maintenance office was very concerned about how we're going to allow municipalities to install equipment at state-owned traffic signals. So we've done a little research ourselves. We've contacted some vendors in jurisdictions in New York as well as Rhode Island. And what we've learned is that there is some technology out there where you don't need to tap into any state-owned equipment. You could have pedestals with cameras, auxiliary cabinets that get a separate power source independent of any state-owned equipment. And that's just one vendor, how they do it. There are many other ways. Regarding, let's say that a municipality does select a vendor where you need to tap into the power source, where you need to get into the controller. We're gonna work out a way that it can be done safely, and it can isolate the municipal system with the state system, similar to preemption. So we're going to find a way to make it work.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I understood. I think you nodded. So it is an encroachment permit process after
Yes,
we
sir.
receive what was.
Yes, it is. Correct.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dwayne. The question from the chat is from Megan Sloan. Would you be willing to provide a presentation to each individual COGS board?
Sure. I mean, we did. I did meet with the COGS, but maybe not necessarily a transportation committee. So we did that last week. So I probably like a little more information regarding what additional value that would have over and above what I did last week. I'm not opposed to it, but I just would like to learn a little more about what she's trying to get at.
Sure. Okay. So, I mean, Megan, I'm sure you can just email Joe.
Yes, correct. Megan, feel free to email me. We can collaboratively offline.
And I see a hand up. Russ Arnold.
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for the presentation, Joe. I want to follow up to Dwayne's comment about the encroachment permit process. We're in the middle of trying to get slot cameras installed in Farmington along some of the state roads as part of the whole issue for safety. We've run into an issue with we are not allowed to install any more poles due to sign pollution in District 4. So curious as to how we would put up our own pole here. And I understand it's different in all the different districts. Some districts allow them, some don't. And apparently District 4 is the only one that doesn't. Just curious if you've had that discussion as to what these cameras would be installed on so that it would get approval through the permit process in District 4.
So Russ, that's news to me. I have an excellent working relationship with all 4 districts. I will circle back with District 4, but I can tell you that we're going to allow municipalities to install structures or whatever's required for cameras. That's not going to be a problem. So I don't know what the requirement is regarding pollution, sign pollution, or whatever it is, but we're going to allow it to happen, and I'm going to have to collaborate with them regarding what are the issues. Also note that the enabling legislation requires the municipality to install 2 advanced signs on every approach to where you're coming up to a device. So let's say you're at a traffic signal and it's a 4-legged approach. That means all approaches must have 2 advanced signs. So talk about sign pollution. That's what the legislature approved. You're going to have 2 advanced signs. If they're not 2 advanced signs, the device will not be approved. So I'll have to collaborate with the district office to make sure that message is loud and clear.
I appreciate it because
Yes, sir.
we're going through a tough time getting the flock cameras installed, and we were told now we're working with Eversource to try and Frontier to try and get them installed on their poles, which costs an additional fee for each location.
Russ,
So-
who exactly are you working with? Are you working with permits, the traffic person?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
I will circle back with you personally regarding what I find with that.
I appreciate it, Joe. Thank you.
No
Not trying
problem.
to be a pain, but just
No, I understand. I mean, that's why we're having these discussions, to learn some of these angst points, pinch points, other ideas we haven't thought of, concerns.
yeah.
Thank
Oh,
you.
it's fresh in our mind. We're literally in the midst of the process, and we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago about it, and that's what we were told. So
So
Right.
my marching orders come down from whatever is enumerated in the statute as well as the commissioner's office. So
yeah,
it's good.
Understood.
We're going to allow it to happen.
thank you.
Okay, question from the chat. Dustin, Baldus, and Torrington said the school bus passing camera system, when done, was a big bust, at least here in Torrington. Is the red light camera system believed to be better, and do the fines vary significantly from the actual statute for a reason? Statute is $139.
I was not in the room when the legislature was debating what the maximum fines could be, so I don't really understand the history or the background of why they chose $50 for the first offense and $75 for second and subsequent offenses. So I don't have a great answer. I really don't.
Okay. Dustin, maybe you need to reach out to your legislator and see if they have an answer. Whoever was in the room when that happened. Fred Ishragi from Norwalk is asking, can we have a copy of the presentation? But this is also being recorded, Fred, so it will be available on the T2 Center website on our channel once we get it up and running. So you can go back and watch and listen to Joe's presentation as many times as you would like once it's up.
Melissa, would it be easier if I, or in addition to, provide a PDF of the slides today, or that just redundant?
No, that would be terrific. We can
Okay.
absolutely get that from you to have,
Okay.
in conjunction with the recording. Sure, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, Fred. I'm not seeing anything else in the chat. I'm scanning for raised hands. If not seeing any others, I actually had a question or two myself, just some things that have come up or that occurred to me as you were going along. My first question is the red light running tool that Safety Research Center developed for you. You said it was 2020 to 2022.
Yes.
Does that mean that municipalities don't need to go any further back than 2020 when they're compiling their data, or is that just the time frame that the research center put together in the tool?
Well, I had a discussion with the architects behind that, and it was all in and around the conditions associated with the pandemic. So traffic conditions were different. Motor vehicle crashes were down, maybe severity was up. So we kind of wanted to exclude that period. I'm not opposed to municipality doing additional legwork and having more years. So we thought 3 years was a good window to understand current trends. But if the community wants to do more work and go backward, which will be outside of the tool, I have no objection. It's all part of that narrative they need to prepare, explaining the purpose and need and how it's going to improve safety at that location.
Okay. I had another one. So you mentioned the comprehensive safety action plan and that you would accept a Vision Zero plan or the regional safety transportation plans that were done. Is that you would accept them initially, and if they applied later on, they would have to have a comprehensive safety action plan, or are you accepting those in lieu of indefinitely?
Yeah, Melissa, that's a great question. The legislature required these comprehensive safety action plans. So I don't know how much more to say about that other than that's what they wanted.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I'm obviously asking for a reason as the safety circuit rider.
Yeah.
Folks,
I honestly don't know.
okay. I'll put that out there to all of you attending. If you are interested in putting together a comprehensive safety action plan, think of me and Jason at the T2 Center. And I had another question. If municipalities have multiple locations, do each of these have to be separate applications, or can they group them? Like you can group speed limits and things like that. As
So
long as they're providing all of the information for each location.
that's right. It's one submittal, and that's the plan. That's what the statute calls for. You have to include all the locations you could potentially consider for these devices. Whether or not the municipality elects to actually install it, but you need included in the plan. So let's say you get 10 traffic signals or whatever in a location, there's no QCTs, qualified. So you get approval to install 10, but you only want to install 5. That's fine. That's
Okay.
fine.
Okay. I have one last question, but I see Luke's hand is up again. So I'm going to go to Luke first and let him ask his question.
Thanks, Melissa. Joe, you mentioned back with like school zones and setting school zone speed limits and pedestrian safety areas. I know only like 3 municipalities, I think, in the state have the ability to set their own speed limits. And you mentioned that 0 municipalities actually have any pedestrian safety zones. If municipalities start making their own pedestrian safety zones, and if more municipalities start making, setting their own speed limits, I assume that, any rules related to, school zone speed limits would fall to the municipalities at that point. Because I know you mentioned, OSTA would like check that, but if the municipality has the ability to do that, then that check is waived.
Right.
So to speak.
It's outside of our purview if that's the case. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Luke. And my last question was just what, and I kind of know the answer, but if a municipality puts an application in and it's discovered that the signal has not been approved by OSTA, or the school zone isn't a proper school zone, obviously you'll be giving them that information when you reject their application, but then what should the municipality do? Assuming they thought that it was approved and realized that it's not.
Well, I suspect that's going to happen quite a bit. Because a lot of municipalities, for what unknown reasons, haven't followed the letter of the statute for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're going to do is we're going to let them know that, and we're going to give them an opportunity to go through the process and get it reviewed and approved. So here again, we want to get as many locations. That may be an initial obstacle, but yes, we're going to be willing to expedite review of traffic signal plans. Remember, OSTA's purview on municipally owned signals is to ensure that it confirms the MUTCD as well as any relevant federal and state statutes. It's not to ensure that it's done the DOT way. That is absolutely untrue, because I know municipalities have a lot of leeway and flexibility. As long as it meets the MUTCD and it's consistent with federal and state laws, you can do it any way you want.
Okay, so if that comes up, municipalities should feel comfortable that
Yes. Yep.
they can apply to have
Yep.
it approved.
Yep.
And
Well, yeah, correct.
okay.
Yep.
Great.
And that also goes with the yellow, red, and pedestrian clearance intervals as well. So if they have submit a previously approved plan, for whatever reason does not have optimized timings, we can go through the process of approving that and can move forward. Correct.
Great, thank you. I do see Sandeep has his hand up again. Before I let him ask his question, Lisa has put the QR code for our brief survey, evaluation survey for the coffee and conversation in the chat. So if folks could fill that out before they leave this morning, we would appreciate it. Sandeep, I'm going to let you ask your question as we wrap up here we're getting towards 11 o'clock. So go ahead.
All right, thank you. Sorry, one last question. So slide 17, I see this note about ATESD for pedestrian safety zones. So So the second bullet says pedestrian safety zone has been previously approved by OSTA or the LTA. Is it one or the other, or is it both?
So it all depends on the road that you're on. OSTA has authority on the state highway system, and municipality has, or local traffic authority on locally owned roads. And there's a caveat, they have to send some information to OSTA indicating that they're establishing that. It's, if you open up that statute, it's very, very prescriptive. And
Right.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Joe. Great.
You're welcome.
And I just saw Lisa also put a link into our survey. If the QR code is not working for you, that link should work. You know, any comments that you have, we welcome them and appreciate your feedback. I'm not seeing any other hands or questions in the chat. So thank you all very much for attending this morning, for your participation. Joe, especially thank you so much for agreeing to be our guest this morning and giving the presentation. It's a lot of good information. And as I said when we started, a hot topic. People have been asking about it since the legislation came out. Oh, somebody's hand just did pop up. Oh no, those are just some thank yous we're getting. And Joe, is there anything else you want folks to know before we set them free?
No, the only other question is, Melissa, if they have any follow-up questions or concerns, other ideas, feel free to email either to the T2 Center or reach to contact me directly.
Yep, absolutely. We're happy to pass along.
The guidelines are a collaborative process, but we have no authority to change what's already enumerated in the Public Act. I mean, that's locked in, and I don't have any authority to change that.
Locked-in's the law now. And certainly if you want to put comments specific to what Joe presented in your evaluation survey, we obviously will forward those on to him if we get any. So, you know, happy to do that for you folks as well. And any, you know, other assistance we can offer, we are here for you. With that, we thank you for your time and attention this morning and your participation, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.